So, this is the story of a fisherman named John, who sets out for fishing in his small boat. However, shortly after venturing out into the sea, something strange happens. A thick fog spreads all around him, making it impossible for him to see anything in the distance. For quite some time, he survives in this dense fog, when suddenly he spots a boat far away. To his surprise, there isn't a single person on that boat. Now curious, John decides to check it out. He ties his small boat securely to the large boat, using a rope, and climbs aboard to investigate. Upon entering the boat, he is shocked to see that no one is on board, though everything looks perfectly normal. In fact, the food on the table is still fresh, as if people had just been there. All signs indicate that humans were present on the boat, but mysteriously, there's no one to be found. John then tries to start the boat, but realizes the engine is broken. He's puzzled. How could such a large boat be left alone in the middle of the sea? With a pair of binoculars, John tries to investigate the surrounding area, thinking the boat's owners might be fishing nearby in small boats. But the fog is so thick, he can't see anything. He returns to the control room and tries to radio a message to the headquarters saying, "This boat is stranded in the sea. If anyone can hear me, please respond." After sending the message, he decides to return to his own boat. But when he reaches the deck, he's shocked to find that his boat is missing. Despite having tied it securely, it has vanished. To make matters worse, the fog suddenly clears, leaving the sky completely open. It's midday now, and with no other options, John is stuck on this ship. Since he's stranded, John starts examining the map, trying to figure out where he is and how he can return home. But there's another problem: the engine of this boat is also broken. If he wants to save himself, he needs to fix the engine. John starts looking for tools on the boat and eventually finds a toolbox. After a bit of effort, he manages to repair the engine, a huge achievement for him. Now the boat is running, and he can go wherever he wants. However, he still needs to figure out which way to go. He tries contacting someone from the control room again, but there's no response. Helpless, John steps out once again, only to face another challenge. At that moment, John suddenly felt the need to use the restroom. Since no one was around, instead of going below deck, he decided to relieve himself into the ocean. But just as he was about to, someone suddenly pushed him from behind, causing him to lose his balance. He could have fallen into the water, but he managed to grab onto the railing and, with great difficulty, saved himself from drowning. The wind pressure was so strong that even getting back up was a struggle. He nearly toppled over, but he didn't give up. Clutching onto the railing, he somehow managed to get back inside the boat. However, he still hadn't relieved himself, so he went below to use the toilet. As soon as he entered, the door suddenly slammed shut. John didn't think much of it at first, assuming it was just the wind that had closed the door. But after finishing his business, when he tried to leave, he realized the door was locked from the outside. He frantically tried to open it, even using a coin from his pocket to pry the lock, but nothing worked. Panic started to set in. He began to suspect that someone else was on the ship, playing a cruel game with him, tormenting him. John banged on the door, shouting, "Please, whoever you are, open the door. I'm not here to steal anything, I swear. I only came to check the boat." Despite his desperate pleas, there was no response. Realizing he had to get out on his own, John looked around and noticed a small cabinet. To his horror, he saw traces of blood inside it. Though terrified, he grabbed a pair of scissors from the cabinet and tried to force the lock open again. Unfortunately, his attempt failed once more. Meanwhile, the boat continued moving, and night had fallen. Suddenly, John noticed a window high above. He climbed up to peer outside and saw a cargo ship approaching from a distance. The cargo ship was heading straight toward his boat. If it collided with his ship, he would be doomed. Desperate to save himself, John tried to signal the cargo ship by waving his shirt, but no one seemed to notice him. Realizing that his life was in danger, John knew he had to stop his own boat from moving. Otherwise, the cargo ship would crash into it and destroy everything. That's when he spotted a rope hanging near the window. An idea struck him. He threw the rope out, hoping to use it to slow down or stop the boat. But things took a dark turn. The rope got tangled in the ship's fan, and as it tightened, the rope wrapped around John's neck. It began strangling him, cutting off his air. Struggling helplessly, John realized there was no escape. Moments later, the rope tightened further, and he was gone. But with great difficulty, John manages to free his neck from the rope using a tool. His neck was completely red, and he was on the verge of death, but barely survived. The rope getting tangled in the ship's fan had stopped the ship, but that wasn't enough. The cargo ship still collided with his boat, causing a violent jolt, and John was thrown to the ground, losing consciousness. He also got a head injury from the fall. When John regained consciousness, he realized the bathroom was now filling with water. Strangely, it wasn't seawater but clear water, which made him realize that someone was deliberately trying to scare him, maybe even kill him. He once again pleaded, "Please, whoever you are, let me go," but no one responded. John was now weak from hunger and thirst. Desperate, he decided to drink water from the bathroom tap, but to his surprise, the water had run out. In despair, he scooped water from the floor and realized it had turned salty. This meant that seawater was now leaking into the boat through a hole somewhere, and it wouldn't be long before the boat sank. John tried to open the door again, but it seemed someone had locked it from the outside. Night had fallen, and when the scene shifted to the deck of the boat, it became clear that someone or something was steering the ship, an invisible presence. It was likely an evil creature. Meanwhile, the water inside kept rising, and John, overwhelmed by the situation, drifted into sleep from sheer exhaustion. During the night, a storm hit the sea, causing further damage to the boat. John was injured even more as the storm battered the vessel. When he woke up in the morning, the water level had risen so high that only his face remained above the surface. He had resigned himself to the fact that he was going to die within minutes. But just then, he heard a clicking sound. He turned the handle, and the door finally opened. Due to the water pressure, the door burst open and fell outward, allowing John to escape. He rushed to the deck, breathing in the fresh air since the oxygen level below had dangerously dropped. John now knew that whatever or whoever was on this ship was determined to torture him. He couldn't take any more of this torment, and with the boat rapidly filling with water, he knew it was only a matter of time before it sank. John made up his mind that he wasn't staying any longer. An idea came to him. He gathered airbags from the ship and used the broken bathroom door to fashion a makeshift raft. Knowing it was his only chance to escape, he ties the materials together and creates a small raft for himself so that he can escape from the ship. But he still needed a few more things to make it work. He carefully prepares the raft, gathering everything he needs from the big ship, including food and water. Finally, he climbs down from the ship and gets onto his raft. Slowly and steadily, he starts rowing away from the ship. Hours pass by, but he doesn't make much progress. To his surprise, the large ship he left behind still hasn't sunk, even though he expected it to go under within 5 or 10 minutes. If it hasn't sunk yet, maybe it won't sink at all, he thought. This gave him the idea that he could go back and fix the leak on the ship. That way, he could travel comfortably on the big ship again. Thinking this, he returns to the ship. The first thing he does is repair the leak. He also builds a pump to drain out the seawater that had entered the boat. After fixing the leak and pumping out all the water, he sets about repairing any other problems with the ship. Once everything was in order, he even repaired the outer parts of the ship to ensure there would be no further issues. After completing all the repairs, he tries once more to contact help using the ship's radio, but again, there is no response. Frustrated, he goes back up to the deck. With the map in hand, he tries to figure out his route and begins to sail the ship again. But once more, the ship betrays him. It suddenly stops, completely motionless in the water. This leaves him anxious and tired of the situation. Just then, he spots another ship in the distance. In a rush to save himself, he decides to leave the big ship behind and take his small raft to reach the approaching ship. But as soon as he starts paddling towards it, the large ship he had just fixed starts moving on its own, chasing him at an incredible speed. It was as if the ship was determined to crush him. He increases his speed, but it's no use. The large ship keeps gaining on him, moving faster and faster. Right before it was about to collide with him, he jumps off the raft and decides to swim towards the other ship. But by the time he reaches where the second ship was, it has already sailed away. Realizing this, he understands that there's something evil on this ship that won't let him escape. He knew he might die in the water, but he was determined not to go back to the boat. As evening approached, he continued swimming in the cold water. The temperature had dropped significantly, and the water was freezing. There were dolphins swimming beneath him. Unable to bear the cold any longer, he finally climbed back onto the boat. His health had deteriorated so much that he didn't think twice. He grabbed a blanket and fell asleep in one of the rooms. When he woke up in the morning, he decided to try and leave again, but now even his room's door was locked. Frustration took over. He couldn't understand what was happening to him. Then, he spotted a small cabinet. Opening it, he noticed a way out above, a small opening that he could climb through to escape. He He entered the cramped cabinet space, which turned out to be a storage area. Every time he tried climbing up through the storage area, he kept falling back down, injuring himself multiple times. Despite the pain and bruises, he didn't give up. He kept trying to reach the opening, but it seemed sealed shut, like there was no way out. The oxygen level in the space was dropping fast, and the cabinet door wouldn't open, preventing him from returning to his room. At that point, he resigned himself to the idea that he was going to die due to lack of oxygen. Just as he was about to lose consciousness, he heard a click, and the cabinet opened. Without wasting a second, he rushed out of the boat and saw that it was approaching a small island. Hope filled his heart as he realized that he might finally escape this cursed boat. As the boat reached the shore of the island, he quickly disembarked. He was convinced that someone on the island had been controlling the boat and torturing him. Grabbing a rod he found nearby, he prepared to confront whoever had been tormenting him. But as he explored the island, he was shocked to discover that there wasn't a single person in sight, no signs of human life at all. Frustrated and confused, he decided to leave the island, but when he stepped back out, he was met with an eerie sight. The boat that had brought him here was moving again, sailing away as if it was searching for its next victim. Watching the boat disappear, John was now 100% sure that the boat and this island were being controlled by some evil force. He knew he had to escape. Determined, he climbed to the highest point on the island, and as he looked around, he saw another island in the distance. As he wandered around the island, he spotted another island in the distance, but he couldn't make out what was happening there. Continuing his exploration, he eventually reached the far side of the island. When he got there, he was shocked by what he saw. It was the exact place where John had started his journey at the beginning of the movie. His boat was tied up in the same spot, just as it had been before. To his surprise, there were people around again, as if nothing strange had ever happened. Everything looked as normal as it had been before his nightmare began. John observed everything in disbelief, wondering if it had all just been a bad dream. But deep down, he knew that everything he experienced was real. The movie doesn't reveal who brought John's boat back to this place, or what the true secret of the island was. The events that happened to John remain a mystery, leaving the audience with unanswered questions. And with that, the movie ends.